Just in the past month alone, HIMS stock has traded down 44%. And in the last year, they are down 58% and around 75% from all-time highs. Even if you bought HIMS stock 5 years ago, you would be down over 15% over that time. While in that 5-year span, HIMS has gone from $132 million of revenue to $2.21 billion in annual revenue. 5 years ago, they were also a company that was bleeding millions of dollars a quarter, while now they're several $100 million cash flow positive annually. So today I'm going to answer the questions: what is HIM's business model and why are they successful? And then also, what has happened to this stock? Their growth has just been exploding over the past 5 years, while their stock price has been plummeting, seeming like it doesn't even have a bottom. So I will also be going over all of the reasons why this is happening. Plus, I will be running projections on the stock to see where the stock price will likely be going over the next 5 years. So getting right into it, what do they do? Well, there's essentially an online doctor's office and pharmacy. They specialize in hair loss treatments, weight loss drugs, sexual and mental health drugs, and I believe they have skincare treatments as well. And one of their main selling points is just how easy and often cost-effective their diagnosis and treatments are. It's a simple process you don't ever need to leave your house to even do. You go to HIM's website, and we'll use someone wanting a hair loss treatment as an example. You fill out a 15-minute form about your health and the issue you have. Then a licensed doctor will review the information, and this step is typically done less than 24 hours. Then whatever hair treatment they prescribe will be delivered straight to your house. This is most often cheaper than a traditional pharmacy or clinic. It's a lot more convenient for the patient, as you don't need to schedule an appointment with your doctor or, again, ever need to even leave your house. And there's also the huge selling point of full discretion. Sexual performance, weight loss, or hair loss drugs are straight up embarrassing to schedule appointments about and talk to your doctor face to face about. So you can get these prescriptions for often a cheaper price without ever needing to leave your house and without having to directly talk to your doctor about in person. Though I do believe through HIMS you do have the option to actually have a video call with the medical professional if you wanted to. But the main reason HIM's business is so successful is it simplifies, makes more convenient, and straight up bypasses almost every reason or excuse people have not to go to the doctors about a problem they have or for a checkup. So we know what they do and why consumers love them, but let's dive a bit more deeper into their actual business model. Over 90% of HIM's revenue is recurring revenue. Customers pay monthly or annual subscriptions, and these simple subscriptions often encompass everything: the medical consultations with the automatic delivery of treatments and medications. And one of the factors that makes HIMS unique is you must pay in cash for the subscription. You cannot use your health insurance. However, there's a workaround. You can technically ask to have your prescription sent to a local pharmacy, and then from there you can pay with your health insurance. But then there's also a much higher charge you have to pay to HIMS as well if you do that. So the vast majority of people, and the standard and easiest method, is to just pay in cash for the subscription on the website and have the product just sent straight to your house. Way more cost effective as well. But anyways, this is a fully intentional choice from the company, and the two main benefits of HIMS not accepting health insurance are: it heavily speeds up the process for the customer. From taking the survey to the drug being sent to your house, this often takes less than 24 hours. And that would not be the case if they had to get insurance authorization first. Then the second benefit being, HIMS would have to hire hundreds, if not thousands of people to talk and argue with these health insurance companies over reimbursements. That sort of billing is just complex and very expensive to deal with. So HIMS is able to save a lot of money there, and it's a huge factor into how they can have gross margins in the mid-70s. Another thing that makes HIMS special and heavily widens their moat is that they have their own compounding pharmacies and fulfillment centers where they themselves produce the final product they sell. They buy the raw ingredients and chemicals for the drugs from FDA-registered manufacturers, then they just put the raw ingredients together into the final product. There are several advantages to HIMS owning their own pharmacies over outsourcing the production to third-party pharmacies. The first being, they simply capture more margin. They capture the profit that the third-party pharmacy would have otherwise gotten. That's probably big enough reason there to invest in their own pharmacies. But the main benefit, in my opinion, which really increases the moat around the business, is personalization. Because they have their own compounding facilities, they can make personalized treatments for customers. They can also change the form factor of medications. For example, they can turn a medication that's conventionally a pill into something like a chewable or some other variant if they wanted to as well. And they also have an AI called MedMatch, which is a powerful tool that also helps with personalization and simply finding the best medication or treatment for a patient. Their AI has a lot of good data to go off of, and this also helps them prescribe better custom formulas for patients, and over time finding even better medication matches for patients due to getting more data on what medicines have worked for specific conditions. This level of flexibility and personalization for the customer adds a lot to their moat, in my opinion, and it really sets them apart from a lot of their competitors. So all this seems great, right? Seems like a company with a moat that will just greatly widen over the coming years and is just off to the races, right? So why has this stock crashed? To simplify the situation, basically around 30% of HIMS' total revenue and their segment with the largest engine of growth is most likely going to be completely taken away overnight. Sounds extreme, but here's the situation. So HIMS sells compounded semaglutide products, and these products are basically just diabetes or weight loss drugs. They're definitely, in this case, more marketed as weight loss drugs. And compounded basically means they are custom made, slightly different versions of a drug, still made by licensed pharmacists, but they are not FDA approved. This will be an important distinction for later. And they sell an injectable version of this drug, and this one injectable makes up over 70% of their total revenue in their weight loss segment of the business. And it's the fastest growing segment, by the way. And literally just a couple days ago, on February 5th, HIMS launched a pill version of this product. And you can imagine a very popular drug as an injectable will be a lot more popular, even more so in pill form. So this new compounded semaglutide pill was a huge expected growth driver for HIMS in 2026 and beyond. But on February 9th, just a couple days after launching the product on their website, HIMS removed it and stopped all sales of the new compounded semaglutide pill. They still continue to sell the injectable version, but why did they have to pull the pill version days after releasing it? Well, HIMS is being attacked from 3 separate and very powerful entities right now, and we'll start with one of them being Novo Nordisk. Novo Nordisk owns the patent on the very semaglutide molecule itself, but HIMS was able to sell their own compounded versions for a while because compounding pharmacies can legally sell copies of a patented drug when the drug is on the FDA's official shortage list, which it was for a while. But that time is over. It was actually taken off of the list around this time last year. HIMS has just been using loopholes, trying to say their product is personalized so it's different enough, and basically just biding their time to try and sell this drug for as long as possible. But Novo Nordisk is now putting their foot down, along with the FDA and the Department of Justice. And here's where things get really messy. Novo is alleging that HIMS is illegally selling a standard drug, not a personalized one, and infringing on their intellectual property. And that intellectual property is literally the drug that HIMS is selling. Where the DOJ and FDA come into play is the Department of Human Services referred HIMS to the DOJ for potential violations of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. But the FDA one is more impactful to HIMS in my opinion. The FDA commissioner stated that they are taking quote-unquote decisive steps to more regulate the ingredients used for compounded semaglutides, essentially eliminating the loophole HIMS has relied on for the last year to sell this drug. Then to throw more salt on HIMS' wound, Novo Nordisk is using the FDA letter as evidence in their lawsuit to also support their allegation that HIMS is using deceptive marketing to claim their compounded drugs are FDA approved when they are not. For example, HIMS advertises that they use FDA-regulated pharmacies and that they get their chemicals and ingredients from FDA-registered facilities, which is true, but registered is not the same as approved, and there's a lot less regulation with registered versus approved, and you could see how this can be argued as deceptive marketing. But yeah, there's a lot of confusing terms here. But Novo is going as far to say that HIMS products are a public health issue and that they're straight up dangerous knockoff drugs. So HIMS is getting attacked from many angles right now. And I asked Gemini, what is the most likely probabilities of how this case will play out between HIMS and Novo and what the repercussions will likely be? And basically, it's almost guaranteed Novo will win, and a third of HIMS revenue will just be literally deleted sometime this year, as they'll have to stop selling a product that makes up almost a third of their revenue. But also with the DOJ and FDA involved as well, the amount of legal fees and compensation that HIMS will have to pay will be immense. And now they also plan to restrict ingredient access to HIMS, messing up their whole supply chain. This is just messy, and it will continue to be very messy for HIMS. This isn't even a dark cloud over the stock, in my opinion. This is straight up a hurricane and tornado that's just going to stay over HIMS stock for a while still. All this, and I haven't even mentioned the heavily increasing competition from brands like Roe and even Amazon pushing more into their territory as well, undercutting HIMS prices. So HIMS is just in a bad place right now. Very volatile and murky waters. So when we're talking about running projections on this stock, that is very difficult when a large portion of their business is being threatened and there's just very little clarity on what they will actually be able to sell, how they'll be fully affected by all these lawsuits and government scrutiny, and also where or how they'll pivot their business once this whole ordeal is settled. There are so many unknowns, but based on very constantly changing analyst estimates, I will try my best to construct a realistic bull, base, and bear case projections for this stock. But keep in mind, even a couple weeks from now, a lot can change with this situation, completely affecting the usefulness of these projections, so just keep that in mind. I'm going off the rough estimates that we have right now, and will run my projections based on the scenarios of how this whole situation might play out. So starting with my base case, which is what I think will most likely happen while being a little more conservative. I have free cash flow per share growth at a 17% CAGR over the next 5 years, and the estimates I looked at literally ranged between 5 to 32% free cash flow growth. So base case, I went around the middle / average, but again, a little more on the conservative side. And I gave them a free cash flow yield of 3.5%, so only slightly more multiple compression from where they are now. And this case assumes they will no longer be able to sell compounded semaglutides. So this year, a third of their business, their fastest growing business, goes away completely. And then they would have to shift their focus onto their other businesses, being hair loss, ED, skincare, etc. But since the stock has fallen so much, even in the likely case that they have to stop selling these products, you'll likely still get around a 16% CAGR return in the stock over the next 5 years from this price. So overall, very decent market-beating returns. But now let's jump over to my bull case. Here I have free cash flow per share growth at 30% and a free cash flow yield of 2.5%. This case assumes that maybe HIMS somehow gets the opportunity to sell FDA-approved GLP-1s and their other businesses continue on their phenomenal growth paths. And this case is obviously possible, but it's definitely an optimistic scenario. And in this case, you'll get a 37% CAGR in the stock, leaving the stock price around $89 in 2031. But now let's jump over to my bear case. Here I have free cash flow per share growth at 10%, and I gave them a 5% free cash flow yield. This would obviously assume no compounded semaglutide sales, as well as possible major repercussions from the FDA, and also very tarnished brand damage to HIMS as well, so acquiring new customers will be difficult. There's more regulatory scrutiny placed onto HIMS and the telehealth industry as a whole, and HIMS gets more restrictions on over what they can sell and how they can market it. So in this scenario, you'll be about flat on the stock over the next 5 years, and it'll just be kind of dead money. So this is a tough situation for HIMS, but now the question is, am I personally interested in buying this stock after it has crashed so hard? And the answer is no. At least definitely not yet. But let's recap HIMS' situation real quick. This is a company that will most likely have a third of their revenue slashed away this year. Their fastest growing segment as well. They are being sued and scrutinized by multiple incredibly powerful institutions, and they're operating in an industry that's constantly changing, changing what you can sell, how you can sell it, how you can produce it, and it's also probably one of, if not the most regulated and scrutinized industries you can operate in. And they don't even have a monopoly on this industry. A lot of people assume HIMS will just be the number one winner long term in telehealth, but there's a lot of competition in here. There's Ro, their most direct competitor, there's Amazon Pharmacy, and there's also many other companies that specialize in certain HIMS businesses, like the company Keeps for hair loss. So it's an extremely competitive market as well. Now, this is just my biased take. I am not trying to tell you to not buy the stock. I'm simply informing you on the situation around the company with my take on it as well. And I mean, if you're bullish on HIMS, then their stock is actually extremely undervalued right now. But personally, I just have a lot of concerns with the company. But again, based on my base case, which I think will most likely happen, you still do get a good return on the stock. So if the stock drops a lot more, which I honestly think it will in the short term, I might consider stepping in, but I just don't think I'll ever invest in a company in an industry as scrutinized and ever changing as healthcare is. So if you're bullish long term on HIMS, now is likely a great buying opportunity, but in my opinion, there are just a lot better opportunities in the market right now. But I'm going to end this video here. Let me know, are you using this crash as a buying opportunity for HIMS stock, or are you going to pass it up as well, at least for now? I want to hear all of your takes in the comments section, and I thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I hope it was informative and that you actually took something from it. But again, thank you all, and I will see you in the next video.